Today, I'm joined by Johnny Rayzone of Howlin Rays. Johnny, thank you so much for taking the time to join me.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So we typically like to start out with your upbringing. So where did you grow up and how would you describe your childhood?
Definitely. So grew up in Los Angeles, California. More specifically, I grew up in Echo Park, Silver Lake kind of area. Grew up to a very, ethnically diverse schools, public schools, So us being Caucasian, we were actually the minority in the school, which was, I attribute a lot of my passion for LA too, growing up amongst just whether it's Latin or just all different ethnicities.
Definitely.
So grew up out there and stayed in LA, for most of my life, just born and bred out here. And in terms of just the birth of myself, that's where it all started. And in terms of the schooling, that's kind of where little Johnny was roaming about.
Amazing. So would you say that you had an entrepreneurial mindset, lemonade stands or selling products? What were some of your passions growing up?
So I grew up with the passion and kind of goal of playing collegiate basketball and eventually going to like the NBA. I was about 6'2", and basketball was kind of what I lived and breathed with one of my best friends at the time. Just my childhood best friend was just always around. He was always sleeping over and stuff, and we were always just, whether it's shooting 40 free throws in a row or 60 free throws in a row, really competitive nature with him. And it was live or die basketball, and eventually that kind of took a turn as I realized how quick a injury could throw your whole career off. So it doesn't matter if you shoot 20,000 free throws or you're doing it so many hours in a day. One little injury can just throw the whole thing off. And I realized I didn't want to go into like whether it's broadcasting or coaching or things like that. I just really enjoyed the sport and the competitive nature to the sport. So after school, I saw some parallels in cooking, in a kitchen, and the whole dancing in the kitchen, whether you're making a pivot move, like Shaq did a lot of drop steps, in the paint and stuff like that. And there's this beautiful kind of dance to being in the kitchen that I kind of correlated in terms of the two. And also with cooking, I saw it more as a platform to express so many different things, but also you can take it so many different ways than basketball. So I kind of made that shift after high school.
Definitely. So what was this transition like? So you're saying it's in high school. Did you end up going into culinary school directly, or what was that period like right after high school for yourself?
No, yeah. So I just entered the workforce with a entry-level kind of dishwashing prep cook job at a French bistro called Figaro Bistro. And that kind of parlayed into, reading Anthony Bourdain books, studying. I ordered like a cheap $30, $40 CIA textbook that was used off of Amazon. At the time, Amazon was really just selling books. I don't know if people forget, like that's what they started with, was just selling books,
Yeah.
And like putting Barnes and Noble and all those borders out of business. And so I kind of just developed this, I've always had this intensity and this focus of, if I'm going to do something, I want to give it 110% kind of thing. So after working, whether it's an 8, 10 hour, 12-hour shift, I would go home and study the textbook or read Bourdain or Michael Ruhlman, Soul of a Chef, Reach of a Chef. He has some great books as well. And I just immersed myself in the culture.
Definitely. So I'm curious, at those early stages in your fascination, were you driven or inspired by a specific culture or specific dish and entree? What was that like? Were you drawn to something specific, or was it just wide culinary spectrum?
Yeah, and in the beginning of my career, it was very much so focused on French cuisine and Italian cuisine with a heavy focus on French.
Okay.
Because their techniques, whether it's the mother sauces or different terminology within cuisine and cooking, it seemed so much more advanced or maybe well documented versus other cultures. If we were to say, if we're talking about like making a birria de ris or something like that. And we're talking about caramelization of the meat. And we're talking about, the different forms of execution on cooking a piece of meat, or, whether it's braising. I feel like the French really documented everything, and there's so much to study on that. And it really is not so much French food, but it's more so the technique. Yeah. And so it started out as an interest in French food, but I realized the reason why I was interested in French food was because there was so much emphasis on technique.
Got it. So when I was reading some of your bio, you have a very impressive resume prior to Howlin Ray. So that's working for others, culinary. I'm curious if you don't mind kind of explain your journey when you started into the French culture and how that has expanded into your opportunities at some other cuisines as well.
Definitely. I mean, I feel like it's been a lot of the moves that I try to make in my career are stepping stones. And also, I like to, if I'm going to work somewhere, like minimum commit for like a year, 2, 3 years, maybe, because that's the way you get the most out of the situation, albeit as long as you're not getting treated like shit or garbage, and it's like uninspiring. But at the same time, that can be a positive thing too in your career, is to get treated, terribly. Because, for example, for me, working for, like Gordon Ramsay and working in those kitchens taught me what not to do or how not to treat people, because I remember the feeling of like, fuck, I got to go to work, Sorry, I should have asked if it's cursing or no cursing.
No, you're good.
Before.
You're good.
The feeling of like, man, I got to go to work and I don't want to go, or I don't want to see that dude that's going to curse me out or throw something at me kind of thing. It was never a positive, experience in that. And so with Howlin, I wanted to kind of create the opposite, which is like, they're excited to go to work. They're learning so much. Their personal lives are developing, etc. But to give you a high level kind of overview in terms of my career, go from Figaro Bistro as like an entry level prep cook, work some private chef gig, kind of like just figuring out where I wanted to work. And I knew I wanted to work for Thomas Keller. He was a huge titan at the time in terms of the culinary industry. Gordon Ramsay as well. I mean, I would binge watch all those Kitchen Nightmare shows. I love that show. Yeah. I think it's a great show for any aspiring chef or even restaurant manager to watch. And at the same time, it's entertaining, So I eventually landed a job with Hans Rockenwagner in Venice. So I moved out there because I didn't have a car at the time, and I just had a skateboard, and I by necessity have to live close to wherever I was working, because the hours were so like, it would be like 10, 12, 13, 14 hours. Wow. Because at the time it wasn't, it was a different time in the kitchen world than it is now. Both in the treatment of employees, but also the abuse of like, OT and things like that. Like now the laws have gotten more rigid and you have to really follow that, Yeah. Whereas before, it was a little more loose, I would say.
Definitely.
And so worked for Hans Wagner for a little bit. And then Gordon Ramsay was opening Ramsay at the London on the Sunset Strip. And luckily I applied probably about a year prior to it opening, and they were filtering through the resumes, saw mine. I managed to land an interview for that and got on the opening team there, which was a great experience to see how Ramsay and his team opened up a restaurant. And eventually I think we got a Michelin star while Michelin was still in LA. Wow. And that was a great experience. And the hours that I was working there was about 9 to 10 a day. And I felt like I could handle a little bit more. So I took on a butcher job, like butchering fish at Nobu, LA. And that was probably that was more of a part-time 4 to 6 hour shift. So I was doing those two jobs simultaneously for about 2 years. And literally my days were just wake up, and then walk to work, go walk after my shift is over, walk to the other job. Wow. And then go home. And I remember at times being able to blink, and you close your eyes and you open them and it's like the next day. And it was just this insane feeling of exhaustion and but it was like, that was my school, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
At the time, I think minimum wage was like $8 an hour, and the rent on Sunset Strip was really expensive. So that was another motivating factor for having a second job. But it was amazing. I mean, I got to butcher fish for 4 hours a day, 6 hours a day, and then go work as the fish entremetier at Gordon Ramsay's. And it was amazing. I was like, I mean, luckily I didn't have a girlfriend or a wife or anything at the time, because if I did, it'd probably be really, really difficult to manage all of that.
Definitely.
But it was something that really taught me a lot about discipline, about time management, and consistency. And I still use all of those to this day. Now, I don't recommend doing it for long periods of time, because it could drive you insane. But it is something where, when I look back on my career, it's something that did give me a notch on the belt, or more grit in my teeth kind of thing, you know. Definitely. And helped shape my career. From there, I went to be a member of the opening team at Bouchon in Beverly Hills with Tom Keller's team.
Wow.
And that was a great experience as well. I mean, these guys, they just have been doing it so long, and their structures, and even things like when you talk about core values, you know, like if your podcast is a company, what is your company's core values? If I were to ask you that, you know, and or even like, you know, Jack Dorsey of Twitter or whatever, you know, like these big business owners and businessmen having core values. And that really opened up the business side to me as a chef, that it's way more than you think. It's not just so much about your mise en place or executing a recipe. It's also, you're cooking with people. You're cooking with your team, and also you're giving them food for thought. You're giving them reasons to be inspired. You're giving them structure and balance and stuff. And that was a great education. From there, I went to a restaurant called La Poubelle, and I took an executive chef job. And I think I waited like 6-7 years to take my first executive chef job, because I had a lot of offers, but I didn't want to go too fast, you know. And I feel like that's something that, because keep in mind, I didn't go to culinary school or anything like that. That's something I saw a lot of culinary student graduates doing throughout their career, and then maybe fizzling out or getting burnt out or not handling the pressure, whatever. So I really took my time. I didn't have the pressure of like wanting to be the boss right away, you know. And a lot of people, I feel like their ego can get the best of them sometimes, and they want to be the boss. They want to be the jefe, the patron, you know, like. And for me, luckily, I didn't have that desire as bad. So it took me about like 6-7 years to finally get to being called like a boss or a chef or something like that.
Definitely.
And so at La Poubelle, we, with the help of my now wife, but at the time kind of I was courting her. I was trying to, you know, get with her. I've always had we actually met at an Indian restaurant that I worked at for a brief stint. And I've always had an attraction to her, and mentally also just, she's piqued my interest. She was like saw her as like a challenge / you know, equal in that sense. And we started talking again, and then she was the GM at La Poubelle, and she said they're looking for a chef, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity. But looking back on it now, I mean, like, that was hard, you know, like I'm the front, I'm the back of the house, she's the front. I mean, there was a lot of fights, a lot of broken drywall in our apartment, you know. But that was a great experience, because that taught me how to run a restaurant, you know, like where there was no one else that was doing it, in the sense of it was all on me. Right. And then she was in the front, and she was extremely talented, and so ahead of her time at that time, because like Instagram, social media, it wasn't even as popular as it is now, but she was already going into that and doing all of that and like thriving. And she's so creative and gifted as an artist that it's, you know, it was, you can recognize it when someone's definitely just like ahead of their time. And so we were able to, you know, increase the sales of that restaurant by a hefty number. I think like 300% or something like that in a matter of 3-4 years. And then my father, he died, and it was kind of a traumatic way of me finding out. One night at service, it was a Friday night or something like that. I got a call from one of his friends, and his friend said, "Oh, Ray missed a 3D meeting," and he never missed 3D meetings. He was like super anal about that. He was the king of 3D, so like he needed to hold court, if you will, with all his 3D nerd friends and stuff. And he missed that meeting, and then so I drove to his house, and it was a really weird sensation because it felt like it was morning. So like, for example, newspapers out in front, doors locked, lights aren't, lights still on, it felt like someone didn't wake up kind of thing. Yeah. So immediately right out the bat, there was a really foreboding, cloud. And so I took my keys, opened the front door, and I'm just screaming out like, "Dad, Dad," and go into the bathroom. And then his body's just there naked out of the shower, stone cold, like cold body, because it was at nighttime from service. And so, and it probably was there since morning, because all the signs were pointing to morning. Yeah. And that experience kind of was a jolt to my system, in the sense of, a huge realization of how short life is. Yeah. A huge realization of, taking care of yourself, but also losing someone. For me in my life, I mean, as most people should, you should be you're going to be your own worst enemy, you yourself. Yeah. But then you have other figures in your life that can influence, or that you do things for, i.e. your parents, or a well-respected, brother or sibling or colleague, etc. And for me, that was, other than myself, the only person that I really wanted to impress, other than my wife, like with my career accolades and things like that. Mm-hmm. So that was an interesting moment in time for me. And it kind of pushed me to the edge where I was just like, fuck it. Like, I'm making great money as an executive chef, all this stuff, but I want to do something a little bit bigger. And I want to explore, go deeper into, at the time, what it was Southern food, antebellum Southern food. I was hugely inspired and fascinated by what Sean Brock was doing at the time. And still to this day, I mean, he's really like a gem / I don't know, like he's in his own way, like this institution of knowledge, this body of knowledge, and also in pushing himself. I mean, I was so fascinated by that. So I booked the flight out to Nashville and staged at his restaurant. Stage is just working for free, basically. Got offered a job and discovered hot chicken, and it was just like, holy shit, this is amazing. I've never had this before. And how cool would it be to be able to say, I brought something to LA that LA has never had before. Yeah. And it's never been about money or finances or anything like that. And still isn't, because we're turning down so many different, deals and franchise and this and that. It was always about like, let's introduce the city of LA, the city that I love, the city that I grew up in, something it's never had before. And that's hard to have that opportunity. You know what I mean? So yeah. I just wanted to jump on it, with the passion for that, but also the passion for hot chicken and what it meant to me in terms of Southern food. And also when I had it, how I just fell in love with it. So definitely that's the short story kind of. Wow. I try to keep it tight, but that's how we're here.
That's amazing. So that experience in Nashville, did you say you were working for another company, or was that just a quick trip?
I was working for free for Sean Brock. Wow. And we went to go get lunch, or maybe I went to go get lunch. And then one of his waiters showed me another spot called Hattie B's, and then I discovered Prince's, and then it just took off from there,
Yeah. How would you describe like your prior career, more cuisine and I would say elegant style dishes, to discovering this Nashville more finger held dish? How was that transition?
It goes back to like when I became a chef, I always had a fascination for like a dream of like, okay, I'm a well-known chef, right? And this is a dream. It's a fantasy. I'm known for cooking fine dining, but I'm in a shack, like at a car wash, those shacks at the car wash that sell tacos or sell burgers or whatever. but I'm in that setting, right? So you have this like Porsche that can cook, you know, bechamel sauces, mother sauces, plate food with tweezers, you know, do smoke encapsulated shit, or tea smoked chicken wings, or, you know, apple caviar, you know, like weird,
Yeah.
who has that capability, but he's actually just making burgers or, you know, something simple for the people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is why I say the diversity of growing up in the schools that I grew up, or getting the education, that the public education that I got up until high school, no college or anything, that was a heavy hand. You know, whether it's eating tacos on the corner or having fries out of the bag that are, you know, 60 cents or something like that. Like, and then being around so many different cultures, it taught me this humility, you know, that I feel like helped shape my career, because I always had this dream or fascination with being a fine dining chef, but cooking, you know, modest, humble food for people at a fair price. And then that, to me, would be a successful venture, because that chef could be doing multi-course meals, but instead he's doing something simple at a very high level, high execution, so much higher than other places, because maybe other places are just order it in frozen, order it from Cisco. I mean, there's so many franchise places that they want one vendor for everything: paper goods, chicken, vegetables. And it's like, we have like 6 different vendors for specific things, you know, whether it's our spices, whether it's our chicken, whether it's our paper goods, whether it's our teas, whether it's our, and it's like, to take that execution to something simple, where most like Subways or McDonald's, they order from one thing for everything, you know what I mean? And it's like, to take that level of execution and apply it to something simple like a fried chicken sandwich or a burger, I thought would be very successful, because a lot of people, I think, confuse our success for, you know, hot chicken, and think that, oh, I'm gonna sell hot chicken and I'll have long lines out the door every day. You know, it's actually, there's a lot more to it, in hospitality and all of that. So
100%.
So that was a fascination that I had. So that's kind of an answer to why finger food, or why modest food, or why, you know, something more approachable than, say, a $300 meal.
Definitely. So I'm curious, you mentioned the vendors there. Starting this and transitioning to LA then, what do you, especially with your experience prior, what do you look for in a vendor when they're providing the ingredients that your end customer is going to get? What's important to you from a vendor?
The same thing we look for from employees, or from landlords, or from any business partners, is the respect of, like, we're your customer, right? Or vice versa, you know, that level of respect, that level of equality in the relationship. We're going to help you, you're going to help us. And through the relationship, we want to build a long-term relationship. And as the relationship develops and becomes more long-term, then you can ask for favors, or you can ask for very niche specific things. The hustle mentality, you know, is very important in the way I do business. And when I say that, I mean, you know, trying to get the most out of any situation, any relationship, whether it's with an employee or even a customer or a vendor. And so that sense of equality is very important. For example, with us leasing this 800 South Arroyo, Pasadena location, the owners of that location own Geary's in Beverly Hills, which is a jewelry store that specializes in Rolexes and things like that. And we were able to negotiate a free Rolex. I think they were thinking it was for me, but I actually gave it to one of my employees. And this employee has, you know, 6 children. And I knew he would never buy something like that for himself. And so to be able to offer that to him and have that piece stay in his family and get passed down to his multiple children, it creates an impact. So if you can build relationships as such with your vendors or your landlords, and you can kill multiple birds with one stone, you know, call PETA or whatever, but you can do multiple things with one kind of swift move. That's what it's all about for me.
100%. So you're bringing this amazing fine dining quality chicken from Nashville to LA. I'm curious, the location I'm sure is very important with the launch of the company. So what made you choose a location that you've resided at for the most part for the truck, and how did that perform?
We started out as a truck, and being truck and mobile was a great way to gauge, okay, our sales are here. Our sales are this at this location. Our sales are this. Our sales are this.
Yeah.
What's an area in which maybe it's in between both of our busiest locations? And that's essentially what we did. And then in terms of Chinatown and the specific four walls that we opened in, that's all we could afford. I did not want to, when you experience like a cold dead body like that, and it's your father, you don't want to get everything up into the point that you've kind of worked for your whole life. You don't want to just give it away and be an easy trick, or you know what I mean? And so,
yeah.
And that's also why I never franchised this, because everything that I've worked up to this point, why would I just give that to some rich dude that has money? You know what I mean? Like,
definitely.
And so what's interesting about that is that something I'm working on with my employees is like, pursuing your passions, pursuing what you love, pursuing what makes you happy, instead of pursuing money. Because then when you're pursuing what you love and what makes you happy, money pursues you.
Yeah.
So that's a big one for us, because we've never been in it for that. And it's been a great mindset that's helped us out. But in terms of the location, that's all we could afford, because we're self-funded.
Yeah, 100%. So introducing this LA, the Nashville style, I'm curious, how does this, would you describe to the listeners, differ from a traditional maybe fried chicken that we might recognize from maybe like a grocery store, etc.?
Yeah, well, it's hard now because there's so many different iterations, right?
Yeah.
So like there's places that serve it on a hot dog bun. There's places that only serve it in tenders. There's places that, chop it up and do it like our Mario fries and stuff. So, what Nashville hot chicken is and what it originated as was quarter pieces. And the quarter pieces are in reference to a breast quarter or a leg quarter. And what most people associate with fried chicken is eighth cuts. Now, 1/4 or a quarter is literally a chicken cut into four, right?
Yeah.
And then 1/8 is a chicken cut into an eighth. And that's how KFC sells it, Popeyes, etc. So you have the thigh and the drum separate. But if you attach the thigh and the drum together, that's a quarter piece, and it takes a lot longer to cook. But the results are much more crispy, much more juicy in the middle. It's just a lot more love that's put into it, because it takes a little more skill to do it like that than it does to just say take an eighth cut and throw it in a pressure fryer.
Yeah.
So Nashville hot chicken originated as these quarter pieces, and when I had these quarter pieces for the first time, I was blown away because I've never had it before. So in terms of origination of Nashville hot chicken, first and foremost, there's the butchery of the chicken and how it's served, which is in the quarters. And then you go into the application of the spice and how that spice is applied. And it's really interesting because in Nashville, you'll have quite a few Nashville hot chicken places, and they all kind of do it a little bit differently. And they have their own swag to it. They have their own style that they utilize when preparing their products. And so each one's, has subtle differences. But the overall concept, remains the same in the sense of, kind of dipping it in an oil-based sauce and then applying spice. And in that sauce, you can have so many different things. And, having it at least be true in terms of heat level. And Definitely. So if it's a medium, it's probably going to be like what most people consider a hot. And if it's a hot, it's going to rip your face off, and then if you go even past that, your stomach's going to hurt. You're going to, maybe depending how your body reacts, maybe you go to the bathroom right away, or maybe next day, you have to go to the bathroom and it's very painful. And then you have nightmares in the night, however your body responds to it. But I think that LA has too many things that are already watered down so much, whether it's, like Americanize this or Americanize that or whatever. And we didn't want to water it down. We wanted to stay true to what Nashville hot chicken is in Nashville and represent it with pride and standards and consistency and, truth to what the original was.
Mm-hmm. So being one of the pioneers in LA with this style, then I'm curious, what did the marketing strategies look like then and then also today to prove that this is truly a Nashville style dish in LA?
Yeah, I mean, it's word of mouth. It's customer service. It's hospitality. It's transparency with the customers.
Yeah.
Those are some key elements to our marketing strategy and how we represent the brand. Truthfulness, humility, and integrity of the product. All these things embody what we do on a daily basis, and also what we're proud of and what our customers are proud of. And that's why they fuck with us.
Definitely. So from that marketing and also just sales in general, can you depict maybe a main demographic for the food?
In terms of age or ethnicity?
I guess both, if you can.
Yeah, I mean, the age group is probably in the 16 to late 30s. I mean, it's a very wide age group demographic, but if you want to go specific, maybe 20 to 36 or some 34.
Yeah.
And then in terms of ethnicities, it's very split between all. I mean, Chinatown's super close to South Central LA. So,
yeah,
in South Central LA, there's a predominant African-American, community, and we get a lot of African-American clientele. We get a lot of Asian clientele. The least clientele maybe is white people or Caucasian.
Yeah.
It's really hard though, because I mean, if you've been down to the restaurant on the line, this is one of the most beautiful things about the restaurant to me too, is that you look at the line. Literally, there was one day where I think it was Andrew Bynum, an ex-Laker, was standing in line, and he's like freaking 6'10" or something. Yeah. And then there's this family with probably like Filipino family that there's a grandma, the daughter, and then the daughter's daughter, and then they're standing next to Andrew Bynum, and he's like super tall, and then behind him you have like these sneakerheads, like hipster, like LA cats, LA kids, and it's like, that's our line. That's something about Nashville, and specifically Arnold's Meat and 3 in Nashville that's amazing and beautiful, is that like for everyone from all walks of life is going there. It's not just limited to if you have money or not. You can anyone can get it, like a $10 sandwich, and not anyone, but what I'm trying to get across is that your clientele is that much more diverse. So if it's executed like at a high level, then everyone's going to fuck with it. Everyone's going to be like, this is really good. So our demographic is one of the most beautiful things about Howlin. It's so diverse. It's so different. And I love it,
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm curious. I end each episode with this. If you could share one piece of advice with an aspiring entrepreneur from your career, what would that be? Maybe something you've learned or regret?
Right now I'm big on, it takes 21 days to form a habit, and it takes 90 days to change your lifestyle. So great job on, doing a week of working out or studying another language or something like that. But keep in mind that it takes 21 days just to make it a habitual process, and 90 days to change your lifestyle on it. So, because I feel like a lot of people want to make change, and they want to improve and rise to greatness and succeed, but can be off put by the fact that like it's hard work. It takes discipline. It takes the time, being put into place. But once it becomes a part of your lifestyle, once greatness is associated with your lifestyle, or once a certain aspect to whatever it is you want to grow or learn upon is in your lifestyle, then it becomes easier. But it does take some hard work and discipline, each day.
Definitely. Well, Johnny, thank you so much for taking the time to join me. And to the listeners out there, make sure to check out Howlin Ray's at howlinrays.com.